I'm going to continue on, I decided. I've got a security guy on the ground with me, but if it starts getting hinky, I'll head back to the Bubble 1, over. I'm not going to say that I was pissed off with the Tannarak for trying to disrupt my first in-person visit to Faz'Reep, but I may have been a little miffed. Screw them. I was going to get this done. Message received and understood, Lieutenant. Take care. Over. I copy Amundsen. Hernandez, out. I turned to Saduk and Captain Smith. Okay, I'm guessing you heard all that? Certainly, confirmed the intel guy. I cannot say that I understood the word hinky you used, but I perceive the gist. I do appreciate your faith in my ability to keep you safe. Saduk and I shared an amused glance. He and I both knew who'd be protecting whom, but I decided to let the good captain hold on to his illusions for the moment. Diplomacy took many forms after all. The bubblers were like our cool, pun intended, little nerdy brother who earnestly wanted to be our best friend and knew all sorts of neat tricks with low temperatures. I couldn't help but like them, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. So, there was something I wanted to show you, Saduk said. Remember when you took me to see that volcano on Hawaii? Kill everything or something like that? Kilauea? I asked, amused. Saduk knew damn well what the real name was. This was him winding up Captain Smith just a bit. Yes, that's the one. Saduk gestured toward a trail that led up the side of the nearest towering massif. From the way the meager light reflected off the rocks that made up the hillside, it was probably mostly nitrogen and oxygen ice. We've got something up there that might interest you. Okay, I'm officially intrigued. I nodded to Captain Smith. Want to check ahead? Make sure it's safe? Certainly. Wait right here. He started up the track, his locomotion tentacles moving easily over the oxygen. It was light blue rather than white. Shale. While he didn't draw a weapon, one of his manipulation tentacles rested on one of the items on his equipment belt. So, how have you been? I asked Saduk quietly. Home life treating you okay? Pretty good, actually. He gave me the bubbler equivalent of a smile. I returned it, knowing he could see my face inside the helmet. Little Thwicka has passed her general awareness preliminaries and has been accepted into a training program for refining and purifying high-end materials. They say she's got a talent. The pride was evident in his voice. I slapped him on the closest equivalent he had to a shoulder. Nicely done. Think she'd remember me if I visited? He twisted two of his tentacles together behind his back, the equivalent of shaking his head in a humorous fashion. Remember you? She reminded me to tell you about that. Whenever you visited, it made their day. Even the time you inflicted us with that twisty square toy. That thing bent our brains so badly. But you figured it out in the end, I countered. Trust me, it caused just as much frustration back on Earth as it did here. Yes, and that's the only fact that stopped some people from accusing you of deliberately inflicting psychological warfare on us. He gave me an amused look. You never told me that you didn't know how to solve it at the time either. I rolled my eyes. It kinda slipped my mind, okay? We looked around as Captain Smith approached down the trail. All good, Captain? It all seems clear, Lieutenant. Come this way, if you please. He turned and led the way back up the trail, but moderated his pace to a slow crawl. That lasted right up until I came right up behind him with an unspoken threat to tread on his tentacle tips if he didn't get a move along. Then he hustled along a bit faster, though it still seemed he didn't think that bipedal motion was all that efficient. Maybe it's not. But we high-temperature aliens have got a lot more energy to waste. Faz'Reep has about 2/3 the gravity Earth has, so I didn't have much trouble getting along, even wearing the cold suit. I knew I was putting out more heat, but it was storing it away nicely, along with the heat it was generating via its own operation. I'd been told that if I ever started feeling hot in the suit, to stop and rest for a few minutes to let it gradually bleed away thermal energy. If I didn't, and it looked like I was likely to overheat, it had been programmed to perform emergency venting. In that particular eventuality, it was a really good idea to get all bubblers as far away from me as possible, preferably over the horizon. We topped out on a small rise, maybe a mile or so up the mountain. The cold suit's internal temperature readout had climbed a few degrees. I wasn't at dangerous levels yet, but that number wasn't far away. So I was glad for the opportunity to stop and look around. So what's up here? I asked. Check it out, Saduk said, almost gleefully. He led the way to a fenced outcrop and pointed over the side with his dominant manipulation tentacle. I followed along and looked, then frowned and looked again. Maybe 50 yards below us, being squeezed out of the mountain like toothpaste from a tube, multiple colors and all, was ice slurry composed of several different elements. It was moving so slowly that the unwary observer could be tricked into thinking it was immobile, but the motion was definitely there. "Is that a cold volcano?" I asked, disbelievingly. "Got it in one." Saduk high-fived himself happily. "The core of the planet's more or less solid, but the pressure down there's so high that it'll turn it from solid to semi-liquid and expel it like this. They get some really interesting amalgams and compounds out of flows like this. Stuff your scientists stare at in disbelief." "Well, damn," I muttered. "Now I really have seen it all." I made sure to pan over the whole of the cold lava flow. The big brains were going to be picking apart my footage with a fine-tooth comb, and lobbying the government for even more research grants on how large-scale cryogenic landscapes really worked. Saduk produced what I recognized as a bubbler camera. "Hey, can I get a picture of you two in front of the lava flow?" He started moving a little farther up the trail. "Sure, okay." I moved around a bit so that the flow would be visible over my shoulder and motioned Smith to join me. "Let's do this thing." "Certainly." He moved in close, then looked up at me. "May I ask you a question, Lieutenant?" "Ask away," I said, posing with one arm over his shoulders. "Very well. I've studied your file and the records of the first contact between our two species, and there's one thing that puzzles me. Why do you bother with us?" I picked up a chunk of light blue oxyrock in response to Saduk's shouted instruction and glanced at Smith. "What do you mean?" "I mean, humanity has basically nothing to fear from us. We've already given you access to faster-than-light travel and many other scientific principles. You could discard us at a moment's notice, but you don't. You personally threatened the Commander Prime Ultra of the Tannarak with war if he didn't back off from us. He wasn't a threat to humanity. Why did you do it?" Hauling off, I hurled the rock far and high, the lower gravity turning me into an effortless Olympic champion. Saduk followed it with his camera pickup. "Well, for one thing, we like you. You're friendly, you're smart, and you provide a whole new way of looking at the universe. 2, you don't threaten to try to take anything we've already got. In fact, it's basically impossible for you to take our stuff, or for us to take your stuff. 3, and this is the most important part, the joint research is still going on. If one of our scientists wants to create an environment at 5 Kelvin, it takes millions of dollars, and it can go wrong at any time. With you guys, all you have to do is go outside." As Saduk came back down the trail, Smith frowned thoughtfully. "So you're saying it is still very much a two-way exchange?" "Oh, absolutely." I was cut off as my HUD flashed red and my radio went live in my ear. "Wait one. Hernandez to Amundsen, what's up?" It was Commodore Lorimar on the radio this time. She spoke rapidly, her voice clipped, but every syllable was clear as a bell. "Lieutenant, we've just picked up movement at the peak of that mountain you're standing next to. There's not supposed to be anyone up there. Get back to the Bubble 1 at the double. That's an order." That was when I felt the rumble through my boot soles, and I knew the warning had come too late. Ah, shit.